as we have them currently, and what Sega has been doing and what we intend to do so far as part of the resetting agenda. The presentation will cover the list as approved by Cabinet, list of entities. We will talk briefly about Sega. Then we will discuss the covered entities captured in the last state ownership report, the performance based on the last report, and some recommendations for the resetting of our specified entities. Ladies and gentlemen, the Sega Act 2019, Act 990, established for the oversight and administration of the specified entities, identified three main groups of entities. That is the state-owned enterprises for which the state has 100% stake. We also have the JVCs. The state maintains various shareholdings in some entities together with the private sector, and the other state entities, mostly the regulators, the commissions, and other public corporations performing public policy functions. So currently, under the Sega portfolio, we have 175 entities, of which the State Interest and Governance Authority is administering. And if you look at the portfolio, we have 53 SOEs. We have 47 JVCs and 75 other state entities. Ladies and gentlemen, at the dawn of our independence, a number of institutions were set up to provide services to the state and also perform policy functions as agencies to support various ministries. The performance of these agencies have been below par, and so the state sets an agenda to reform these sectors, starting in 1965 to establish the State Enterprises Secretariat to oversee the performance of these agencies. We have gone through various reforms, and in 1993, we had the Divestiture of State Interest Law, PNDC Law 326, passed. The whole approach was to divest state interest in non-performing entities and also to raise funds for the state. Additionally, in 1993, we had the passage of the Statutory Corporation Conversion to Companies Act, Act 461, to convert some 51 corporations into companies. However, all these reforms have not led to the desired results as we expected. So a number of reforms also continued. As part of the public financial management reforms undertaken by the state in 2012, there was a need to establish a central oversight body to oversee the state interest in these specified entities. And so to be able to do that, the state, with support from the World Bank, carried out an investigation into the performance of some SOEs and regulatory institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, some of the key findings that we are already aware were established in this report. Obviously, poor corporate governance, including political interference. I would prefer to say political interventions. And with the poor corporate governance, mostly when it comes to transparency and accountability, were established. The underperformance of these SEs leading to losses were also identified by the World Bank report. Then the inability of our SEs to contribute to the consolidated fund in a form of dividend also came up. You would agree that the SOEs and the other entities are oversighted by various agencies and also ministries. That was also a challenge. And so, as part of the recommendations, there was a need to carry through the 2012 reform of establishing a central oversight body was an agenda the government sought to achieve. And so, in 2019, the Sega Act was promulgated, Act 990, establishing the State Interest and Governance Authority to administer the state interest in all these SCs. Since the promulgation of the Sega Act and the passage of Act 990, a number of reforms has been done. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important for us to understand that for every portfolio, before you can institute any measure or any intervention, there's a need for you to understand the portfolio. So together with the Ministry of Finance, we carried out the equity study to understand the portfolio Sega is going to manage. And within the study, we also identified a number of defunct entities with various assets that Sega had to deal with. Additionally, in 2021, Sega was able to establish the list of 175 and submitted for approval. We again carried out a board evaluation to understand the makeup of the boards, how they are functioning, and make some recommendations. Another key development in the life of Sega was the development of key documents. So there was a need for Sega to work with the Ministry of Finance to establish a state ownership policy to be the overarching policy that would help Sega and the state to administer the interest in these entities. And together, there was a performance management framework also established, and the Sega Act requires that Sega establishes a code of corporate governance to help all of us to administer the state interest. In 2023, these key documents were approved and launched in 2024. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the development so far in the life of Sega, and we believe that once these key reforms has taken place and the key document has been established, Sega is ready to reset. I'll call on Mr. Bonso Jabin to continue with the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you very much. Director General, captains of our state institutions, we now move into the performance of our specified entities over the period. The last state ownership report that was prepared was published on August 2024 by Sega with support from Ministry of Finance, the World Bank, and other agencies. The report comprised the performance of 147 specified entities, which consisted of 53 state-owned enterprises, 31 joint venture companies, and 63 other state entities. Now, it is important to stress home that these SOEs were also segregated into wholly commercial and dual policy. In other words, some SOEs play both commercial and regulatory functions. And so such is the nature of the specified entities that were covered in the last state ownership report. Now, this conversation is going to start by asking ourselves some begging questions, and then we will analyze the data and elicit some answers that will enable us to follow the President's agenda of resetting our specified entities. Now, you'd realize that at the time of publishing the state ownership report, the report relied on 60 audited financial statements and 87 draft financial statements. Now, post-publication, after August 2024, the authority has received an additional 22 audited financial statements. And so, for the purposes of this presentation, the data sets have been adjusted with these 22 audited financial statements. Therefore, we now have 82 audited financial statements and 65 draft financial statements. Now, we stress home this importantly because it is important to take notice that as of now, 2 years post-publication, we still have 65 of our entities who have not been able to audit their 2023 financial statement. Such is the not so good nature with regards to compliance to statutory reporting. And that obviously will be part of the conversation that we'll be having today. Now the begging question comes. The data analyzed showed that out of the 53 state-owned enterprises that were reported on, 35 of them reported profit and 18 reported net losses. And among the 18, 9 of them reduced their loss position from 2022 to 2023. The same thing happened with the 16 joint venture companies which the state controls. Only 6 reported profits and 10 reported losses. But the minority interest joint venture companies where the state does not control, out of the 15 entities reported, 11 JVCs reported profits and only 4 reported losses. Now, our other state entities, the public corporations, out of 63 OSCs reported on, 42 OSCs reported net surplus and 21 reported net deficit. Now, the question is, if you have so much of our entities improving in performance, why is it that we are not feeling the impact at the aggregate level? Why are we still seeing non-performance, high unacceptable losses, and huge exposure to the public purse? Why that situation in the midst of this? Ladies and gentlemen, we shall go through and understand and unearth what is behind these numbers. Now we move straight to the state-owned enterprises. There are 53 of them. You will take notice that per the analysis done, these entities, about 58% of it comprises of the energy sector by asset size. And then an additional 13.8 for the financial sector, 10.1 for the transport sector, and 10.2 for the agri sector. So right from the get-go, you get the impression that the areas of focus, the sector areas of focus are the energy sector, the finance sector, the transport sector, and the agri sector. Please let's take notice of that. Now let's look at the key sector performance. Per the last report that was prepared and analyzed, the total asset base of the 53 SOEs is in excess of 338 billion Ghana cedis. 338 billion Ghana cedis. And to put this figure into context, this figure is equivalent to 40.7% of Ghana's nominal GDP for 2023. So such is the enormity of the sheer size of the SOE assets that the state control. Sadly and regrettably, what do we see? An asset size of 338 billion Ghana cedis was sweated. And what was the return on assets? Negative 2.5%. What was the return on equity? Negative 8.1%. In other words, we are holding a sheer size of assets, but we are not making any return on them. So then the question is asked again, if 35 of our 53 SOEs are improving, why this? Let us drill further down. Now we want to put this performance into historical context. Now you'll see that over the period, our SOEs have struggled to contain their cost of operations. And this is evidence. Ordinarily, you would want to expect our SOEs to post a healthy profit before interest and tax. But that is not the situation of ours. In our situation, our SOEs posted a loss before interest and tax of about 1.3 billion Ghana cedis. In fact, in 2022, the loss before interest and tax was a staggering 9 billion Ghana cedis. What this simply means is that our SOEs are not able to take care of their costs, let alone provide for interest costs to return profit and be on the path of dividend. We are so far away, even though we are seeing some improvement in the numbers. Now let's drill further down. Because there is a loss before interest and tax, obviously our loss after tax keeps on staring at us. In 2022, the 53 SOEs reported 14 billion loss after tax, and this is now 8.5 billion in 2023. So such is the situation that we find ourselves. Now we want to drill further down to understand these numbers. There are 10 state-owned enterprises who together control a significant chunk of the asset portfolio and who together hold a significant impact on the entire portfolio in terms of risks, in terms of revenue, and in terms of bottom line performance. Now these 10 SOEs, their total aggregate net loss was 11.6 billion in 2023, and this net loss surpasses the entire net loss of the 53 SOEs. Now
Please subscribe to Morris TVGA.